We have one person, two people. Hi, Carol. Hi, Suzanne. Welcome. Um, yeah, we'll get started very soon. Pat, Lou, Roland, Gail. All right. So we'll go ahead and get started. Hi, I'm Omar Acevedo, and I'm the Literary Program Coordinator here at the Mark Twain House Museum in Hartford, Connecticut. Thank you for joining us for this virtual program for Only If You're Lucky. Virtual programs like this are produced in part with support honoring the late Frank Lord. We are grateful to honor his memory with these programs. And we also want to thank our members. I know there are some of you in the audience. If you're not a member, please consider supporting our museum by becoming a member. There are so many benefits to becoming a member. You'll receive free or discounted admission to our author programs, the House and Museum, year-round discounts in the store and cafe, and much more. Please visit our website for more information. We have so many cool things coming down the pipe, and we really want to share those with you. So please consider becoming a member. Our author, Stacy Willingham, is the New York Times, USA Today, and internationally best-selling author of A Flicker in the Dark, All Dangerous Things, and Only If You're Lucky. Before turning to fiction, she was a copywriter and brand strategist for various marketing agencies. She earned her BA in magazine journalism from the University of Georgia and MFA in writing from the Savannah College of Art and Design. And our moderator is Mallory Howard, who is the assistant curator here at the Mark Twain House and Museum. During this event, we encourage you to have a conversation with each other in the chat. If you have a specific question, though, please post that directly into our Q&A section, which is at the bottom left of the screen. So that is all from me for now. Please sit back and enjoy, and I'll turn this over to Stacy and Mallory.
Perfect. Thank you, Omar. And Stacy, thank you so much for joining us tonight and chatting with me about your fantastic book.
Of course. Thank you for having me. So excited.
Very excited to chat with you. Before we get started, the first thing I wanted to ask you to do is just sort of give a brief summary or synopsis of what your latest book is about.
Yes, sure. So my latest book, and I have it over here too. It's called Only If You're Lucky, and it was just published on January 16th, so just less than a month ago now. And Only If You're Lucky tells the story of a college freshman named Margot, who is a little bit shy, a little bit timid. She's kind of had a hard time easing into life away at college, and there are a variety of reasons for that, but primarily because Margot is still grieving the death of her best friend, Eliza, who tragically and unexpectedly passed away the summer after their senior year. So Margot and Eliza were supposed to go away to college together. They were supposed to live together, and those plans just kind of were suddenly ripped away. And because of that, Margot's kind of lost in her grief, kind of floating through the year until she is approached by another student who lives down the hall in her dorm named Lucy. And Lucy asks Margot to live together in a house off campus with a few friends the following year. And Margot has no idea why. She has never talked to Lucy before. She didn't even know Lucy knew who she was, but she really has no reason to say no. She doesn't have anything else going for her. Lucy is she's hard to say no to. She just kind of has a presence to her. And mostly Margot is just really craving that sense of friendship and belonging that she had once known so well, and that was so abruptly taken from her. So she moves into this house with these other girls, and it's kind of the start of a beautiful thing. The summer together is fantastic. She kind of clicks with these girls immediately and thinks she's found her new group. And that would be a really happy ending if this wasn't a thriller, but that is not where the story ends. Instead, it kind of quickly descends into chaos when one of the boys who lives in the house next door is brutally murdered. Lucy goes missing without a trace, and Margot finds herself ensnared in the middle of the investigation, kind of trying to piece together both what exactly happened, but also why she was even invited into the orbit of these girls in the first place.
So good. It's just so
Thank you.
good.
Thank
We'll
you.
there are probably people watching that have read it already. There may be people watching that haven't. So we are going to stay away from spoilers
Okay.
for that reason, or I'm going to try to. But one of my first questions, I was sort of intrigued by this. So in your opening, you have a quote by Robert Louis Stevenson, and it says, "If I ever read Satan's signature upon a face, or read Satan's signature upon a face, it is on that of your new friend." Can you talk a little bit about why that quote spoke to you and why you decided to include it at the beginning?
Yes, of course. I love that question. So, and again, it's so hard to talk about without spoilers because, of course, my books are they're all thrillers, and typically the inspiration for them is in some way worked into the twist, and so I have to speak in such like vague blanket terms. But Only If You're Lucky is kind of my take on a dark academia novel. It's not a classic dark academia novel for a variety of reasons, but it's a story about a group of friends, a group of students away at a college campus, kind of investigating the murder of one of their own. And because of that school setting, and for a variety of other reasons, I had Margot major in English, and she's enrolled in this great books class where every week she's reading a new book. And one of the books that she's reading is The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which is where that quote came from. And explore a lot, really in all of my books, but especially in Only If You're Lucky, is who kind of exist in the gray area of life, characters who are not fully good or fully bad, but some unique mixture of the two. And especially in Only If You're Lucky, Margot really thinks hard about this concept of good and evil coexisting in one person, which is the really the whole point of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And so little themes from that book, Jekyll and Hyde, are woven throughout Only If You're Lucky. And it's something that Margot spends a lot of time thinking about as the story progresses for various reasons. It's also about friendship. And so that quote, "If I ever read Satan's signature upon a face, it is on that of your new friend," really encapsulates those two themes, the idea of friendship and this friend coming into Margot's life who there's just something about her that doesn't quite sit right, as you'll come to learn when you read the book. But it's also kind of talking about the nature of good and evil and like the duality of a single personality.
Yeah, and I love that she's an English major, and I even was happy to see Twain pop up for a moment in the book.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that was a little pleasant surprise for me. Another thing, I just wanted to take a minute because I really loved this part of the prologue that you wrote. So I just wanted to read a couple sentences of it
Okay.
before I ask you my follow-up question to it. But it says, "How effortlessly we glide from cold shoulders in public to applying each other's lipstick in sweaty bar bathrooms, fingertips touching in a swarm of warm bodies, from spreading hot breathed rumors behind cupped hands to tossing compliments across the room like darts, aiming for a bullseye, but really just hoping for something to stick. I remember thinking she chose me specifically for some reason I'd never understand. Like she spotted me from across the hall, eyes on the carpet and shoulders hunched high as I tried to hide my underwear at the bottom of the laundry basket, flowers and stars and little pink pinstripes, embarrassingly high school, and decided I was it. It was me, her best friend." And I really loved that part. And as I continued to read through the novel, there really is that element of female friendship and
Mhm.
how special it is and how important it is. And I felt that part was just really touching and something that I connected with. And it
Oh,
even
thank
made me
you.
a little bit nostalgic. So
Mhm.
talk a little bit about the importance of, female friendship in the novel and the connections that are made.
Yeah, so thank you. I'm glad you connected with that. It's funny, from a lot of people who've read this book, I have heard that it's kind of a nostalgic book. I mean, they always preface like, except for the murder and all the really dark things that happen, it kind of made me miss college. And
Yeah.
I really tried to put myself back in that headspace of being in college and what that was like. And what I remembered, because this was a unique book for me to write, my first two books are the protagonists are 30-something-year-olds, which is in my current point of view. I'm 33. But Only If You're Lucky is in the point of view of a 17-year-old. And so I had to put myself back and remember what it was like to be 17. And the thing that stuck out to me the most was when you're that age, you don't really know who you are. You haven't quite figured things out yet. You know, may not be fully confident in who you are and sure of yourself, but the thing that matters more than anything is your friends, because that's what you have. That's what you're surrounded by. And so both finding them and keeping them is the thing that is kind of more important than anything else. And I wanted to really showcase that feeling of being a young female in a setting where you don't really know many people. I also went to an out of state school without knowing anyone, and so I vividly remember day one, kind of looking around and thinking like, how am I going to find my place? And the feeling almost of desperation, like I would do anything to find people who, you know me and accept me and find my belonging. And so I try to take that feeling that I think is fairly universal and just amplify it a bit in this book. So yeah, it's all about the quest for friendship and belonging and how really wonderful that can be if you find it. But also how desperate you may feel if you sense that you're losing it. And if you happen to slip under the spell of the wrong kind of person, how dangerous that could potentially get when your thirst for belonging is so strong that it kind of clouds your judgment for everything else.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you brought up the, you know, the old college days, because that was the other thing besides that female friendship that feels so special and important. The other part of it that really grabbed me was the good old college days, you know, and
Mhm.
throughout the book, there's parties and there's drama and drinking,
Oh yeah.
and it's kind of fun to revisit some
Yeah.
of those crazier days. So that part of the book was a lot of fun, and that's something I think, being a thriller reader, is that, you know, sometimes you read thrillers and you know that at some point there's going to be that twist or that
Mhm.
surprise, and you're just waiting for it. And sometimes the books can drag a little bit and you're kind of like, all right, it feels like a job to get there. But
Yeah.
your book was so effortless. I mean,
Oh,
I
thank
just
you.
breezed through it because it was so much fun to
Thank you.
read and it was so engaging. So, I mean,
Thank you.
loved
I
it. I
appreciate.
just
Oh,
absolutely loved it.
thank you. You know, and in a lot of ways, this book is I would say this book is almost a little slower paced than my first two, mostly because there are a lot more characters in this book, but they're all important and they all play a role. And so it was really, really important to me to make sure they were all fully fleshed out. And so this is kind of, in addition to a thriller, in my mind, kind of like an in-depth character study in all these different characters and their motivations and their personalities and why they do the things that they do and how it all coalesces in the end. But you know, it is a thriller, so at the same time, while I did try to take my time with each character and really establish who they are and their motivations, you got to kind of keep the action going too, so it doesn't feel too slow.
Right. And I mean, that's the thing. It just kept going, just such a
Oh,
page
thank you.
turner. And this is a great sort of segue, is there are great characters in this book. And I'm curious, I have a couple, kind of a two-parter to this. My first part of the question is, are some of the characters, whether in this book or your previous ones, do you ever base them off of people in your life in some way? And my follow-up question to that is, who was your favorite character to write in this book specifically, and
Ooh,
why?
okay, I love that. So to answer your first question, it's kind of a yes and no type of question. I personally don't think it's possible to write without drawing some kind of inspiration from personal life, because that's how we perceive the world and come up with our ideas and our viewpoints is through personal experience. But I don't recreate people in my life and turn them into characters. I'm actually very intentional about that. But I do take what I do mostly do is I take real memories, but I'll change the people involved. So there are quite in all three of my books, there are a lot of my own personal memories in there, things that actually happened, but I will change the circumstances surrounding the memories. I'll change the people involved in the memories. I will also take like personality traits or like quirks that people in my life have and give a different character that trait or that quirk. But I won't like copy and paste a person into a character. But it's, you know, my friends and family and people who know me always they're like, oh, I remember that day. Like they definitely can pick up on like what is a real thing and what's not. But I will never take like a full personality and copy it. And then the second part of your question, my favorite character, and Only If You're Lucky, is by far Lucy.
Mhm.
I love her. She was just a lot of fun to write. And it's funny, not in she's not the most likable character for a variety of reasons, but she depth to her that I don't think is very apparent in the beginning. But as the progresses and you start to learn more about her and why she is the way that she is, I readers feel the same way. I just have a deep empathy for her, and she's just very, and so she was fun to create.
Yeah, she's a lot of layers as you come
Hmm.
to learn throughout the book.
Yeah.
So changing a little bit about just your process and things of that nature. So first question is sort of how do you come up with your next thriller? Is it something, do you have a bunch of ideas and you brainstorm? Is it something that comes to you in the middle of the night and you have to jot it down? How do
Mhm.
these ideas come to you?
Yeah, kind of all of the above. My ideas almost always start with some kind of true case, true crime case, something I see in the news, something that just piques my interest. So, for example, for A Flicker in the Dark, the idea came to me when I was watching a documentary once about serial killers because I've always been interested in both true crime and criminal psychology. And it came up on the screen of Dennis Rader, who is the BTK serial killer, walking his daughter down the aisle at her wedding. And that because they were in a church where he served as a deacon. He was, you know, she was in her wedding dress, he was wearing a tuxedo, they were holding hands. And at the time, he had killed multiple people and nobody knew, including his family. And that image was so striking. The thought of intimate moment in your life, like how would it feel to look back on that and realize that the person you were sharing it with was such a monster and you had no idea. And so that led to the idea of A Flicker in the Dark, which is about the daughter of a serial killer. So it's usually it's things, and I have a similar story if you're interested in hearing a similar story for All the Dangerous Things and Only If You're Lucky. But it's things like that where I'll see something and a point of view will stick out that seems really interesting and different, and then I just kind of chew on it for months. I mean, I just think about has that point of view. Who is this character? What's her motivation? What is she trying to accomplish? Like, and eventually the character comes to life in my mind so vividly. It's a person, and then once they are a person, like a fully fledged person, that's when I feel like I can sit down and write the story around them.
Wow, that's really interesting. Yeah, who doesn't
Thank
love
you.
true crime and serial killer? That
Yeah, it's it's one of those things. It's I never base my books exactly off of a real case. I always change, and oftentimes it's multiple cases combined into one. So I'll take like four, five, six different cases I see and kind of inject it all into one different story. But honestly, is stranger and scarier than anything I could just come up with on my own. And so yeah, I use information from all over the place. I mean, again, things I see on the news, things I read in the paper, documentaries, podcasts, books, all of it.
so sort of a follow-up to that then. Most people, obviously, if you're talking about nonfiction, there's sort of a research process. And but for thrillers, do you find sometimes that you have to do research, whether it is watching documentaries or maybe visiting a college campus to help bring back those memories? Do you find yourself in any of your books, including Only If You're Lucky, doing any sort of research?
Yeah, I do a bunch of research for all of my books. you know, on the one hand, there are things that factually I want to get correct. And I'm trying to think of an example like, I don't know, like if I'm setting something in a different time period, I need to make sure something existed back in the 70s, or say, you know, what kind of car would someone be driving then? So like there's little research like that. But then there's also mainly I just want to make sure I'm being as accurate as I possibly can when it comes to the types of characters I'm creating. And so if I'm writing a story, serial killer, I'm doing a lot of research about serial killers so I can understand what personality traits they have, what were the red flags that set off the people around them, what, you know, what are some of the things they did that were really unsettling, and then I'll take that and put it into my story. So for Only If You're Lucky, I did a lot of research about real cases and just kind of unsettling things that happen on college campuses. And I came across the story of the cult at Sarah Lawrence College. Have you heard about that?
Have not.
Okay, so there's a documentary on Hulu that it's called Stolen Youth, I
Okay.
believe, or Forgotten Youth. I think it's Stolen Youth, the cult at Sarah Lawrence College. And it basically tells the story of something that happened at a small college in 2010. A group of students moved into this house together, and very similar to the beginning of Only If You're Lucky, you'll notice some parallels. They move into this house together. They're sophomores, I believe, and they're deciding to live together off campus for the very first time, excited to kind of like get away from the dorm and under the thumb of the campus, and branch out on their own. And one day, it sounds very strange, but one day, one of the roommates' dads moved into the house with them. But though he did it in such a careful way that it didn't strike anyone as odd. I mean, at first it's he's just visiting for the weekend, and then it's well, he actually doesn't have a place to stay right now, so he's going to couch surf for a second. And then it's, well, yeah, we actually have this guest room that no one's using, so he's just going to move in here for a little bit. And slowly, this man created himself into the lives of these students so completely that he turned them into a cult, and he was their leader, and he had total and complete control over every aspect of their lives for years. And I really fixated on that story when I was writing Only If You're Lucky, because while it's not a cult book, you'll notice the character of Lucy has some cult leader type qualities. And that's where I got those qualities from, was learning about this man who injected himself into the lives of these students, and how exactly he was able to do that. Like how you can be so manipulative, how you can be such a puppet master, but also the traits of the students that made them susceptible to something like that.
Wow. Well, that is on my to-do list, is to watch that now.
It's kind of dark, but it's good.
Yeah. Well, so working with and watching things like that, and kind of writing thrillers that are on the darker side, do you ever find yourself getting affected mentally by that? Do you sometimes need to walk away, or is there something that you do that takes your mind off of it? Just curious about, does it affect you when you're working with these types of topics?
Definitely does. I mean, there's on the one hand, my stories don't affect me negatively. I think just because I'm so aware that they're not real. I create it from nothing, and I spend years thinking about it, that it's I know it's not real. But I do so much research on real that do happen that, yeah, of course it affects me. I mean, I read and watch and listen to some terrible stuff when I'm trying to research these books. Um, but I am so obsessive when it comes to my books. I have a really hard time stepping away until I'm done. And so I think what I do is I like immerse myself completely in whatever book I'm writing and the research associated with that until I'm done. And then once I'm done, then I'm like, okay, time for a palate cleanser, and I'll step away for a little bit. But yeah, you know, it takes me about a year or so, maybe a year and a half, 2 years, when you actually think about the research and like the chewing over the idea before I sit down to write, to work on any one book. So I kind of live in that world for a year and a half to 2 years, and then once I'm done with it, I'll let myself decompress a little bit. Yeah.
since we are from an author's home, obviously one of the big questions is sort of continuing in that same vein of writing process. How do you write? Is it something where you like to go to Starbucks or the library? Do you like to sit sort of at a home office? And, we've talked to authors over the years that love pen and paper and some that use typewriters and the good old fashioned computer. So can you talk a little bit about your writing process when you're actually doing that?
Yeah, so I stick to good old fashioned Microsoft Word. I'm not a pen and paper writer. I would love to write on a typewriter, but I think I edit as I go too much. It would never work. I just can't, I don't write a full draft and then go back and edit. I edit as I go always the whole way. So yeah, when I have my enough of an idea like clear in my head that I feel like I'm ready to sit down and write it. I am a pantser, if you're familiar with that term. I fly by the seat of my pants. I don't plot my books out. So I have my big idea, I have my main character, and then I have a general idea of the twist. So I kind of have to know what the ending is because I have to know where I'm going. I have to have some visual cue in the distance that this is what I'm working towards. But I don't know anything in the middle, and I just make it up as I go. So that leads to a lot. It's messy. My first drafts are messy because half the time I don't even really fully understand the story I'm trying to tell until I'm so far into it. And then something clicks, and I'm like, oh God, I have to rewrite everything I just wrote. But that's just my process so far. And I write at home. So I'm in my office right now, which is currently being renovated. So normally it's not quite this disheveled, but if I'm not in here, I am either on my couch with my dog or at my dining room table. So I keep it pretty casual. But when I really need to like crank out some words, or if I am just having a hard time focusing at home, I also enjoy going to coffee shops. I will probably go to a coffee shop like maybe once a week.
Now, my other question is about when you are a reader. So, because you're a thriller writer, do you tend to stay away from reading other thrillers? Or is it one of those things where it doesn't matter? You kind of have your own creative juices and you don't have to worry about diluting it in any way?
Yeah, no, I love thrillers and I read a lot of thrillers. My kind of sweets, my favorite type of book though is not, I wouldn't even call it, I love thrillers, of course. I read a lot of them, but I love really like detailed, nuanced, descriptive stories that have some kind of mystery at the center of it. So it doesn't necessarily have to be pegged as a thriller, but if it's suspenseful, if there's some kind of mystery, if I'm trying to unravel like some sort of thread, that's what I enjoy. And I read them all the time while I am writing because I do get like I get inspiration from other authors, but it's not their stories and it's not their voice because I think every author has their own unique voice and it's almost not even possible to emulate it. Like if I sat down and tried to write the way Abbott writes, I wouldn't be able to do it. Like that's just not how the words come out for me. But I can study the way other authors words in a unique way or the way they like construct a sentence or things like that. So I study like the structure of other authors to just see like, oh, that's a unique way to do it. I've never thought about doing it that before. And I don't worry so much about having like my own voice or ideas diluted by that. It's just that's not really what I'm looking for. I'm just kind of looking for like I'm studying the mechanics of other writers.
Now, I'm always curious about this one, and I never used to do this when I first really got into thrillers, but then I started talking to other thriller fans, and now I can't stop doing it, which is getting distracted by trying to figure out what the twist is during the
Yeah.
whole book. I'm like, oh, it must be this person, or this is going to happen. Do you feel and I think this a lot of people talk about this. Do you feel sometimes like you have to make sure you add some sort of misdirection in case people are trying to figure it out?
Yeah, yes and no. On the one hand, I am aware of the fact that people pick up thrillers because they like a twist. And I thankfully like coming up with twists. So it's fun for me to come up with a twist. It's like to try and place the clues and add the misdirection. And I like to see if I can try and trick you. I mean, I enjoy that part of writing thrillers. That's why I write thrillers. But at the same time, fully aware that thriller writers are very smart and they're constantly trying to figure it out, and I'm not gonna fool all of them. So to combat that, one, most of my books have multiple twists because I kind of tell myself, all right, like if they got one, like they didn't get them all. So I can kind of fool you somewhere. But also that's why I really like, I try to have my books focus on some sort of theme, or there's something about them that hopefully is provoking and, you know, will kick off a really good book club conversation. So like even if you guess the twist, hopefully it's, you are still satisfied when you finish it. It's, the twist isn't the only thing going for it. That's my hope in what I try to create. Because that's how, when I read, that's important to me too. I don't care so much about a crazy twist coming out of nowhere. I love to be surprised, but I would rather be thinking about a book long after it's finished. And so that's what I try to accomplish when I write.
And I'm not just saying this, but with your book, I did not do that because I was so invested
Thanks.
in the story that I did not find my mind wandering as it typically does to figure out what happened. And
yeah, thank you.
You got me because I did not figure out any of the twists.
Oh, nice. That's what I like to hear.
No,
yeah, it's
go ahead.
Even though I read a lot of thrillers, I typically find that I don't really try to figure it out. I don't know why.
I was just about to ask you that. I was going to say, when you read thrillers, do you find yourself trying to figure out what the twist might be?
And I think it's because I'm really interested in the mechanics of how it's being written. And so I do notice, okay, that I think that's a clue. I think they're trying to hide that. I think they're trying to misdirect me here. Like I do pick up on that, but I'm not really doing it with the goal of figuring out the twist. I'm just doing it because I notice those things because that's what I do when I write. And so so no, I am not really the kind of person who tries to guess twists. And honestly, I feel like I'm kind of bad at guessing other authors' twists, which is sort of funny. I'm not the kind of person who figures them out like every time.
Wow, that it's very interesting to talk about that sort of thing. Now, when Omar was introducing you, he talked about sort of your background. Why did you decide to switch over to being a thriller writer?
Yeah, you know, I always knew I wanted to be a writer. It was just kind of a matter of kind of writing I wanted to do. When I was in high school, I loved my I was in AP English, and I loved the whole like reading a book and then dissecting it and talking about it and digging up the themes. And that might have been like the first indication that I probably would have enjoyed writing a book, because I just loved that so much. But I was also on my high school newspaper, and I really enjoyed interviewing people and learning their stories and then writing their stories. And so that is what led me to major in journalism in college. And after I graduated, I couldn't find a job at a magazine or a newspaper. And so I took a job as a copywriter at a marketing agency, and I was doing freelance journalism on the side. And I really enjoyed it, but I noticed after about a year that all the articles I was writing were feature articles. So they were about a person and their life and their, you know, trials and tribulations. And they were very, very descriptive and very, very, very long. And so my editor was always like cutting them in half because I was going over my word count. And she was cutting all the descriptive stuff, because when you're writing an article, it doesn't matter quite as much. You know, you need like the meat of the story. And that was kind of my light bulb moment that I think I would probably like writing fiction, because I love descriptive writing. I like writing long. I like writing about people. So I think creating characters would be fun. Um, Kind of like my first thought that, okay, maybe I should sit down and try writing a book. And so yeah, so you know, truly, I still like vividly remember to this day, even though it was 10 years ago now, coming home from work and sitting down at my desk in my bedroom at my apartment in Atlanta at the time, and just like opening a Word doc and in chapter one, you know, and I had no idea what I was doing, but I was like, I'm gonna try, and I just fell in love with it very quickly. So
Wow, that's amazing. Um, so another sort of question I have for you is, um, do you, when you're working on a book, and you talked about sort of taking a break once you finished one, how much downtime do you really get before you need to start working on the next?
Lately, not a lot, because if you've noticed, I've published 3 books in 3 years.
Mhm.
So I have been jumping fairly quickly into the next one. But I have a really hard time living in 2 worlds at once. And so, with the exception of a very brief overlap, basically, when I am sometimes it'll overlap if I have like a final copy edit of one book that will happen while I'm in the middle of writing the first draft of the next one. That's the only time my books will really overlap. Other than that, I do try to give myself at least a month, maybe. I mean, I would love to have more, but lately about a month between when I'm done with one and I'm sitting down to write the next one. And in that month, I'm just trying to like wipe the slate clean, get out of the heads of those other characters, get out of that setting that I just spent so much time in, and prepare myself to now live somewhere else. Um, but yeah, I'm also lucky that I've 2 years at least had an idea of what my next book would be. So even when I was wiping the slate clean of the previous one, it's not like I was starting with a blank page for the next one. I kind of had an idea of what it would already be, which made it a little bit easier to jump into it fairly quickly.
So is it safe to say that you may be in the midst of one now?
Yes, I'm trying to get the first draft done this month, actually. That's my goal. So I'm pretty close to being done with the first draft of my 4th book. It's chugging along. So yeah, I've been working on it for maybe about 8 to 9 months now. Ever since I wrapped up Lucky and sent it off to my publisher, I've been working on this next one, and it'll be out next year. I can't promise when, but sometime in 2025.
Well, we'll have to have you back so we can
Yes, I
chat
would
about
love
that
that.
one.
Yeah.
Um, and we're just looking at the time for those of you watching. If you have a question, please get those in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. So we will be taking questions if you have any of those within the next couple of minutes. So you're going to want to start writing those if you have any that you would like to ask of Stacy. So with that wrapping up, what, and this is something we always like to ask people that come, since once again we're the Mark Twain House, but who are some of your favorite authors, titles? Do you have a big TBR pile next to your bed, or do you find that you don't have a lot of time to read because you're busy writing and editing? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I wish you could see my TBR right now. It's probably 60 books in it, and it's right there. But yeah, it depends. Again, it depends on where I'm at in the stage of my writing when it comes to how much time I have. Right now, I find I don't have much time to read because I am spending most of my time writing, trying to get this draft done. But I kind of touched on authors and titles earlier. It's for me, I love authors who have a very descriptive writing style, a very unique authors who can make me feel something. Like, it's not exactly the plot. I love a plot driven book, but a voice that really comes alive in my mind. That's what I love. And some element of a mystery that's kind of thread through. So for me, those are authors like Tana French, Megan Abbott. I mentioned her earlier. I love her. I love Emma Cline.
Yeah.
Gillian Flynn is one of my favorites of all time. I mean, she's just incredible. Donna Tartt. Ironically enough, they're all women, which was not intentional, but those are just kind of like the authors that I gravitate towards over and over again. Rebecca Makkai, I've loved her recently, so
That's a very good list.
yeah, they're the best for a reason, in my opinion.
Now, another thing with books like these is the potential one day for it to be turned into a series or a movie. Is that something one day you're hoping with one or more than one of your books that will happen? And for those that already read Only If You're Lucky, can you give us a couple of actresses that
Oh
you might want
gosh.
to play some of your, maybe one or two of the title characters.
Yeah. I'm so bad at the like who's your dream cast question, because what's funny is I actually see all of my characters in my head. All my books kind of my mind like a movie. I see every scene, I see all the characters, but what's weird is they are not people that exist in real life. Like I don't really know who they are. And so I have a hard time associating a actor or an actress with any given character because it's never quite right in my head, but it's so I don't know. I need to think about that a little bit more. And also I am not quite as married to the characters and like what they look like and how I describe them. It's more so like I would love an actor who could bring out the nuances of their personalities. Um, so for example, I'm not gonna say which character because I don't want to give anything away, but there's a one of my characters in one of my books. I think Jake Gyllenhaal would do a fantastic job because he does a really good job of playing a character that like balances on the edge of good and evil. And then there's a character in one of my books that's very much like that. And so because I've seen so many of his movies and I've seen his ability to do that, like I like look at him as a dream cast member because I know he could pull out the intricacies of that particular character. And then would I ever want my books to be made into a movie? Yeah, that would be great if that could happen one day. But we've gotten Flicker in the Dark was optioned a few years ago, and I got to watch kind of how that process unfolds, which was a lot of fun. But you have to jump through. There's a lot of things that have to go right in order for an option to end up actually as something you're watching on your screen. So we just haven't gotten that far yet, but maybe one day.
Oh, I would love to see any of your books on the small or large screen because I think it would be phenomenal.
No, thank you.
Do you see one question that says, "Oh, I'm asking all the questions this person wanted to ask."
No, you're a good moderator.
I'm glad I'm able to do that. Well, if there are any other questions that people have thought of, feel free to enter that in as we wrap up and I ask a last couple of questions. As a writer, even with the thrillers, I'm sure there are moments where you get frustrated or you have writer's block, or what are some of the tools you use to combat that?
Yeah, I get frustrated like every day and I get writer's block all the time. Sometimes I don't love forcing my writer's block because I have found that if I'm not feeling it, if I'm stuck and I force myself to sit down and write just for the sake of getting the words down, I usually end up going back and deleting what I just wrote the next day anyway, because I read it over and I'm like, this is just not good. So I'm a pretty firm believer that creating a novel takes place away from your computer. It just kind of takes place in your head if you give yourself the freedom and the flexibility to just like let your mind wander. So I do that. If I'm really struggling, I will go take a long walk and sometimes I listen to music or podcasts, but if I like really need to work something out, I just walk in silence. And my mind, no matter how many miles I go, is just picking over whatever is not working. And by the time I get back, I have a fairly good idea. Something has popped into my head that then gives me like the motivation to sit down and try and figure it out. So read when I have writer's block. And I mentioned this bookcase over here is where I keep my trusty favorites. I will truly just grab a book from that shelf behind me and flip open to the prologue or one of the first chapters and just reread it over and over and over again, because those books are books that somehow they jar me out of a writer's block. It just reminds me like, oh yeah, this is what good writing is supposed to sound like. So that those are my little tricks. But there's also at the end of the day comes a moment where you do have to force yourself to sit down and just write. And usually it's just super painful for the first like hour or two, but something you'll get something down on the page that ends up pushing you in a direction that you need to go, and then it starts to get easier.
That's really interesting. I've actually never heard of that answer of reading other books. That's
yeah, there's just something for me. When I have writer's block, it's not that I don't know to happen. I mean, I know what needs to happen. I sit down and I try to make it happen and it's just not coming out right. And I don't know why. And so it's yeah, I think for me it's reading the words of other authors that just reminds me like, oh, this is what a good sentence sounds like. I should try that.
Love it. Well, Nicole beat me to the punch because I was going to ask this question next, but I'm going to give her credit because she got it in. For aspiring writers, what's your best piece of advice and how should they go about getting seen by a publisher?
Yeah, so I would say it sounds very cliche, but my best piece of advice would just be to never give up on yourself and not don't be too hard on yourself because writing is a very very vulnerable thing and it's really hard. It's really hard. I mean, like I mentioned, I'm on my fourth book now and there are moments where I'm like, God, I can't do this. But you just have to power through and you can't give up because the book that you have heart and in the back of your mind will get out if you just give yourself the patience and the grace to get it out. Um, you have to one thing that took me a couple years to like really fully embrace is you're never going to please everyone. There's a lot of rejection in this industry, both when it comes to trying to find an agent, trying to find a publisher, but then also once your book is published, the reactions from readers and reviewers and critics, like you're never going to get a 100% success rate. And so I try to remind myself of that constantly and write the book that I want to write and try not to think about or worry about the opinions of other people because that's just going to lead to paralysis. Um, so yeah, I mean, if it helps at all, it took me almost 7 years to get published. I actually wrote another book before I wrote A Flicker in the Dark that was rejected by 115 agents. And the one hand it stung to be rejected that many times, but on the other hand I decided to just put that book away and write another one, and that was the one that ended up changing my life. So if you let all those rejections get to you, kind of stop you in your tracks before you've even had the chance to see what you can accomplish. And then in terms of getting noticed by publishers, I think the thing that I finally embraced with A Flicker in the Dark that I didn't even realize I had to embrace with that first book I just mentioned writing that never got picked up is finding your own unique voice. And I kind of touched on this earlier about how I can read the works of other authors I admire, but I don't think it's possible to emulate someone else's voice. It's like a singing voice. Like 10 people can sing the same song and it's all going to sound different because that's just how it comes out for them. And I didn't know what my voice was when I wrote that very first book. And as a result, I think the book was very bland. And then with A Flicker in the Dark, I had figured out what my voice was and I really just leaned into it and embraced it. And I think that's what caught my agent's attention and then ultimately my publisher's attention. So if you can just figure out what your voice is, that's something that will be unique to you always. And it's what'll make your book stand out.
Great advice. Never give up. Keep pushing
Yeah.
through.
I know it's so cliche, but it is truly the one piece of it. I remember reading that when I was trying to get published and I was like, oh, thanks. Like, that's really helpful. But it really is the best advice I could give.
And I would imagine too, there's a lot of, I'm sure self-doubt and pressure, especially once you've hit a certain level of success of how am I going to keep upping that bar and putting out books that my fans are going to want to read. And I think, like you said, it's kind of important to sort of just push through it and stay true to yourself and your voice.
Yeah, it does. Like in the beginning, a couple years ago, I thought there's every stage of your writing career is difficult in its own way. But as you more books, the pressure does get higher and higher because suddenly there's an audience and people expect certain things and you don't want to let them down. But my little trick that I do is every book I write, I just completely delude myself into believing that no one is ever going to read it. Because with The Flicker in the Dark, I really thought no one's going to read this. Like, I don't have an agent. I don't have a book deal. No one's ever going to read this. And so I made it just the book I wanted to write. I wasn't thinking about anyone else. And now with every subsequent book that I write, I just tell myself, no one's going to read this. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they don't like this twist. Doesn't matter if they don't like this character. It doesn't matter because I'm the only one who's ever going to read it. And then obviously that's not the case, but it helps me get through the mental block of, the fear associated with putting out something new.
That definitely sounds like something I would do. Just kind of, no one cares.
Just live in denial. It's fine.
Well, I don't think there are any other questions, and we are pretty much approaching time. So I just want to thank you again so much for joining us. And for those of you who are watching, such a great book. I mean, really phenomenal. Thrillers can be really tricky. Like I said, sometimes you're really like having to work your way through to the end, but that is not the case for this book. I loved it. I connected with it in so many ways, which you don't always think you're going to do with a thriller, that you would make connections to the characters and the plot and what's going on. But I truly did feel connected, nostalgic, everything you're really hoping for in a book. And then the added bonus of the twists that I did not see coming.
Thank you.
This is a phenomenal book. Congratulations on it. As I said to Stacy before we came on live, I have read all of her books. They're all amazing. So whether this is your first book or your third, highly recommend picking up all of her books and diving into them because they are a fantastic time. So Stacy, with that, thank you again. For those of you watching, Omar put the link so you can purchase Stacy's book in the chat. So make sure you go and click on that link and place an order, and not only help support authors like Stacy, but also the Mark Twain House Museum, which we of course really appreciate. So Stacy, thank you again. Hopefully we'll see you in 2025 for your next book.
I would love that.
To do this again with you. I had so much fun.
Me too.
Thank you all so much for joining, and everyone enjoy the rest of your evening.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mallory. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.